This video is designed to introduce key vocabulary associated with the topic Introduction to Mendelian Genetics. Some vocabulary associated with this content area includes genes, locus, alleles, homozygous, heterozygous, genotype, phenotype, dominant, and recessive. And in the video, I will show you what some of these terms mean.
Okay, so genes encode proteins, and those proteins can make up anything in your body from your antibodies to the keratin that's in your hair, to the melanin that's in your skin that gives skin its color. And all of those things are what we call traits, or biological traits, things that you can see that are physically expressed. And you can see that happening here when we are created as that one original cell that we start from. So, a couple of things that you need to be aware of, some vocabulary that you're going to need. You're going to need to know what a gene is and what a locus is. All of you are going to need to know that for the keystones. The same gene can have lots of different versions. We call those different versions alleles. So even though we all have the same location, which is what a locus is, for where these particular traits are coded for on our chromosomes, which we talked about back in Chapter 5 in Cell Cycle, they can have different forms. So I might have brown hair, while some of you might have blonde hair, some of you might have like rusty blonde hair and different colors in between. So the gene is the piece of DNA that directs that cell to make that particular protein, like the color of our hair is caused by the keratin and the melanin and those other pigments that are proteins inside of our bodies. And here you can see, and we're talking back to Mendel's traits, talking about wrinkled seed versus round seed, and he had those other either-or traits that we talked about. There you go. An allele is any alternative form of a gene occurring at a specific locus on a chromosome. So an allele is just a different form. So even though when you're talking about seed shape is the trait itself, but you can have wrinkled or you can have round. So the trait itself is the shape of the seed, and then the alleles are the different versions of that particular trait that you can have. Then there are some other key vocabulary terms that you're going to need to be aware of. There's homozygous, which means the same, homo meaning same, wrinkled and wrinkled. That's the same allele at the same location on a chromosome or locus. And heterozygous, which means different. Here you have a wrinkled allele and a round allele. And they are both found at the same location on a chromosome, which is known as a specific locus.
Genotype is defined as the genetic makeup of a cell. This is typically represented using two letters, one for each allele. So it could be A, it could be big A, or it could be little a, but always represented by letters. Phenotype is defined as the physical appearance of a gene. And this is any kind of physical trait that you can see. It may include things like hair color, eye color, and those sorts of examples. Things for hair color could be something like brown or blonde. Eye color might be something like blue or brown. Dominant traits are expressed when one or both alleles are dominant. This is represented in the genotype by capital letters. So for instance, if you had a genotype that was capital A, this would show the dominant trait. If you had a genotype that was capital A, lowercase a, that would also represent a dominant trait. Recessive traits are expressed only when both alleles are recessive, and those are represented by lowercase letters. So using the same example as before with letter A, the only trait that would be expressed as a recessive phenotype would be lowercase a, lowercase a. Some questions that you should think about for class tomorrow are whether or not you can identify the difference between genotypes and phenotypes. We have some examples here. We have big A, which is a genotype because it's identifying the genes within a cell. We have green, which is a phenotype because it is a physical manifestation of that expressed genotype. This is another genotype because it is the two letters representing the alleles. Blue is a phenotype, again a physical appearance. See if you can do the other 5, and we'll talk about those in class tomorrow.